when I say exactly what you say, I say like, look, a lot of us are here on the internet making the time to really make friends on the internet because we're so alone in real life. And sometimes people are offended, like, why are you saying that? You're saying vegans are a bunch of shut-ins or something. It's like, no, that's just, my experience in life and most of the other activists. Vegans say things like, oh, well, everyone's really alone, like everyone's living in a situation where they don't know any other vegans. I say, no, actually, I've talked to some people who know like 12 or 15 other vegans in real life. And I say, I talked to one woman from New Zealand, and she knows like 15 plus other vegans in the real world. And they're always really shocked. So let's start with that.
Never in my life have I surrounded myself around so many idiots. So many idiots that actually know they're idiots. Sign up on my Patreon just for $1. And that $1 will give you access to me and my experiences. And you can continue to see how better I am than everyone else in this vegan demimod.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great. Do I call you Kiwi, or what do you want me to call you as a nickname for this purposes of this broadcast?
Yeah, Kiwi's all good.
So look, I first met you maybe 3 years ago on Facebook. I think back when my channel was brand new. So, in some ways I don't know you at all, don't get me wrong. But in some ways I feel like I've known you since forever, yeah?
Yeah, I think it might have been about 2 years ago.
We met via Sorsha Morava's Facebook group, which, back then Sorsha was not famous. I mean, in a sense, none of us are famous, but you know what I mean? And my YouTube channel was just starting up and so on. One of the things I remember about you, I mentioned you without naming you in a few conversations. Sometimes I talk to vegans who say things, it's understandable. Vegans say things like, oh, well, everyone's really alone, like everyone's living in a situation where they don't know any other vegans. I say, no, actually, I've talked to some people who know like 12 or 15 other vegans in real life. And I say, I talked to one woman from New Zealand, and she knows like 15 plus other vegans in the real world.
Yeah.
And they're always really shocked. So let's start with that. You actually know, 15 vegans? How many vegans do you know in the real world?
I to be honest, I probably couldn't put a number on it, but I've met at least 50 that live locally in my city.
Yeah. That's kind of amazing. So, I mean, your city in New Zealand can't be that big because all of New Zealand isn't that big. Like, the total population of New Zealand is not very high in the millions, yeah?
No, New Zealand's about 4 million people, and the city I live in is Christchurch, and that's about close to 400,000. Yeah, but anything between 350, 400,000 people.
Wow. So I just ask you, to be blunt, do you think that's an illusion? Do you think it's an illusion that New Zealand has a ton of vegans, or do you think it's the reality?
No, it is definitely an illusion. It's probably because I've involved myself with a lot of other like animal organizations, and like I run a vegan club. I just finished running a vegan club on my campus. So I've just been a lot more, I guess, a bit more of like a socialite, just sort of socializing with everybody.
Okay, well, look, I'm happy for you. I mean, the first thing is, obviously, I'm really happy for you to hear that. I thought you were closer to me in age. Did you just finish university, or did you go back to university as an older person? Like, I don't know your age. I'm just guessing.
No, I've just finished university. I've spent about 5 years there.
Okay. Wow. So, look, I mean, that's kind of amazing. But in your city, 50 vegans. I was at university recently, and I both didn't know any vegans and couldn't get vegans to cooperate with me. And there was a vegan club on the campus, but the guy who organized it basically prevented me from cooperating with the group, even though I was one of the signing founders of the group. And, I never found out why that was. I think he basically felt threatened by me. Like, that guy has his own YouTube channel, but he gets like 10 views per video. So I think he had the feeling that I was a more charismatic or possibly more influential person, or maybe he just hates me. But he didn't let that on. Actually, whenever we talked privately, he and I, when there was nobody else around, he was actually really friendly with me when we were alone. But when we were in a group, like a political meeting type setting, I think he was really uncomfortable with the fact that I could, sway the crowd kind of thing, if we were actually having a debate or something. But anyway, so my experience of that was negative. When I left Canada, I actually got a bunch of fan mail from vegans at my university who said, oh, I'm also vegan at university and we never met. It's like, well, it's a bit late now.
Yeah.
So I knew one vegan in Victoria, and it's a big city, and Vancouver's right next door. So I know it's shallow, but I mean, I think it's really worth talking about is knowing vegans in real life, right? Yeah.
It's important. I think that's probably where a lot of people sort of fall short or maybe fall out of veganism is because they don't have that support. And I guess that's why a lot of people turn to the internet to see if they can find other, like-minded people and find other vegans that are like them, because not all the vegans in Christchurch all get along, and, not all of them are into the same thing or come to veganism from the same background either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I totally feel that way, but it's interesting because sometimes other vegans respond to that as if it's a criticism or as if I'm insulting vegans. When I say exactly what you say, I say, like, look, a lot of us are here on the internet making the time to really make friends on the internet because we're so alone in real life. And sometimes people are offended, like, why are you saying that? You're saying vegans are a bunch of shut-ins or something. It's like, no, that's just, my experience in life and most of the other activists. Like, one of the main reasons. So I was just going to ask you, you said in some sense you've been involved with some animal rights group, and that's part of the way you met so many people. Can you say a little bit about that? I mean, what kind of animal rights group, or what, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So not all of them, I would say, like, animal rights. Like, one of them is, like, the Christchurch Vegetarian Centre, which is mostly run by vegans. But that's sort of more of, like, an older crowd. There's also a group called Save Animals from Exploitation, which is like a New Zealand. They've got animals as their forefront of their focus, but I wouldn't say they're like animal rights or like fully animal rights or animal liberation, but they definitely do push a few sort of vegan agendas. And then there's a New Zealand Anti-Vivisection Society. And there's a local one that's called Christchurch Animal Rights Action. So they do a lot more of the protesting sort of stuff.
Right. So he does. This is just my ignorance about New Zealand. Is Christchurch the capital of the whole country, or only of your province? What is the political?
It's the biggest place in the South Island of New Zealand, but the capital was Wellington, and the city of Auckland is the biggest city for population.
Right. So I just wasn't sure if Auckland was actually the capital or if it was just the most famous city. Auckland's the main city foreigners know about. So, okay. Yeah. Well, so that's interesting. But really, you have this activism going on in a city where you're not, influencing government, where it's really activism for the sake of influencing other people. Yeah, I'm guessing, yeah. That's interesting in its way, too. So where I was, Victoria is not the biggest or most powerful city in Canada, but it is actually the wealthiest per capita. We have almost no poor people. We have a lot of rich people in Victoria. And it's also one of the oldest. We have a lot of retired people and elderly people. And it is a political capital. So it's the political capital for that province, which is, one of the most important provinces. So you really have all the ingredients there for Victoria to be an important place for vegan activism or animal rights activism of some kind. But it's not. It's a failure. So that was interesting for me to see. Although I just say, like, I don't know. You can tell me about New Zealand this way, but I mean, that part of Canada, British Columbia, the West Coast, it really has a reputation for the kind of yoga culture, like physical fitness culture, as well as the kind of hippie aspects. So again, there are kind of a lot of the ingredients there for you would think. You know what I mean? You would think that veganism would have a pretty easy time there. I mean, how do you feel that? I really, again, New Zealand to me is just a foreign country, period. I know nothing about New Zealand. How do you feel that veganism fits into the culture, at least in your town?
I actually have quite an interesting background. Like, I have done a lot of non-vegan jobs myself. So the area, this was obviously before I come to the philosophy, but New Zealand is based on, like, I think tourism's like the number one bringer of income, and the next one might be like the financial market or something, and then the third one is agriculture. Right. So farming is really, really big here, and in the area that I live in, there's a lot of dairy farms. Like, I can't even count probably how many millions of like cows and sheep and things that are killed here every year, considering the small population that we have.
Right. Well, I just mentioned that's a really interesting thing about New Zealand versus Canada. A long time ago, I made a video talking about the economics of how the Canadian government pumps money into our dairy industry. that, where they're taking taxpayers' money and giving it to cattle farmers, basically. And in Canada, the whole contraption loses money. Like, that part of the economy is a failure. And a guy from New Zealand who was interested in the numbers, and many British colonies are like that. England itself, the government generally puts money into cows, and the government is not turning a profit. It's losing money on that. But I got a guy from New Zealand got in touch with me, and he gave me the numbers, and he went through the numbers. We kind of went through the numbers together. And we figured out that New Zealand is actually one of the exceptions to the rule. In New Zealand, your government does make money out of the dairy industry. It is a for-profit industry for both the government and for the farmers. So that's rare. Like, you can look at that as success, you can look at it as failure, but you guys are actually turning a profit, partly because you sell your dairy products to Canada, among other bizarre places. So many people in the world, many vegans are used to complaining the government wastes this money on meat agriculture or dairy agriculture, and it all loses money. But actually in New Zealand, you have a more difficult argument to make, because that is part of your economic backbone, yeah?
Yes, it does become quite hard when you're trying to discuss with people about, what other financial ways can they make money if we got rid of animal agriculture and things like that. And yeah, because they always bring up that it's our number one export, but it's not necessarily like our number one industry that makes the most money, but it's definitely one of our number one exports.
Well, I assume also, New Zealand, I assume that fishing and wool are part of your national identity. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume fishing is a huge part of the country's background, and also wool. Aren't you also known for sheep and wool?
Yes. Although wool has taken a little bit of a backdrop in the last sort of probably 15 years since dairy's come up, but I don't know, it may have increased again since we had a few falls in the market with the dairy in the last year or so.
Yeah. Well, it is one of those funny things. Canada also is just this kind of, dismal British colony where it's like, well, if we're not famous for the fur industry, what are we famous for? You know what I mean? It's like, that was really our history. Our whole national identity was made out of fishing and fur trapping. So, I feel it. I can, I grew up in that culture too. I can imagine what it's like being on the other side of those conversations. But it's like, yes, everything, like things that were literally on the flag for this country, things that were in the emblem, are part of the British Empire. We're challenging all of that. We feel all of that is a horrible error. And, anyway, but New Zealand, so just given that you have that overall positive situation, you're well connected coming out of university, you're well connected to a pretty big community of activists and so on. What were you looking for when you went to Thailand? You went to Thailand almost 1 year ago now, yeah? And you hooked up with the vegan subculture there, yeah?
I didn't really meet that many of the vegans in Thailand. Like, I wasn't necessarily going there just for that, but I'd always been, like, coming from New Zealand, you always kind of, Asia's probably one of the closest sort of cheapest places to travel.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what really attracted me there. And I will admit, I do quite like eating fruit, and the variety here is not very great.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because for me especially, a place like Thailand could easily... Thailand has been a huge part of my life for more than 10 years. So I said a long time ago it would be really convenient for me if there was a positive vegan scene in Chiang Mai or anywhere in Thailand for me to keep in touch with and go back to. Do you feel like there's something there for you to go back to, something you'd want to go back to?
Possibly. I don't know though how, because I'm looking at heading into the legal industry, and I don't really know how I'd be able to work and live in somewhere like Thailand. Right. Like thinking like 5-10 years down the track. So I don't know how that would work as a long term, but I would definitely like to go back for the short term.
You're looking at something like law school, I take it then, yeah?
Yeah. Well, I've finished my Bachelor of Commerce in Accounting and Taxation, and I finished my Bachelor of Laws, and I just started my professional study that you have to do before I get admitted to the High Court as a lawyer. I think that's the downfall of law, is that it's a lot harder to transfer to other countries because every jurisdiction is different. And
within Canada, you can't even transfer between cities. That's part of what makes it depressing. If you become a lawyer, you are stuck on that spot. You better love the city you built up your credentials in. And within the U.S., it can be like that from one state to the next. Like, if you want to move from California. So, at several, as you might have guessed about me because I studied political science, I considered the option of becoming a lawyer at several different points. And every time I considered it, the final answer was nope. But in some ways I envy you. But believe me, because I did the research, I really understand where once you're into that, then you're very much tied to the place. But I think for that reason, like a place like Thailand, and as you know, I'm a critic of the whole permanent vacation thing. Everyone knows that about me. But nevertheless, I think it would be really meaningful if there was somewhere in the world, anywhere in the world, that vegans went on vacation. As a vacation, not as a permanent vacation, as a temporary vacation, where they met other vegans and had that kind of positive experience, So in a sense, I'm sad if Chiang Mai can't play that. But I mean, for me, it wouldn't matter. I mean, it could be, it could be Jamaica, it could be Taiwan. I mean, Taiwan has a very strong vegan culture, but it's not a very nice place to go on vacation. It could be anywhere in Asia. From my perspective, it's not that I'm a pro-Thai person particularly, but it's funny because I think so many people, like right now we have Christmas and New Year's coming up, and there are a lot of vegans who don't want to spend Christmas and New Year's in Boston or in Australia or wherever they're from. They want to go somewhere, to have a vacation. So what somebody in the comment section, Curtis, is just laughing about a vegan festival in Jamaica. But don't forget, Jamaica was a real trailblazer for vegetarianism, not veganism. But Jamaica has strong roots with promoting a vegetarian lifestyle, at least. So there's something to be said for that. When I was talking to Jason Pizzino months ago about us organizing our own event, me and Pizzino, and back then it was Vegan Cheetah and the Light Twins and Vegan Last, said, okay, let's have our event and meet up. We went through such a brainstorming process that did not begin with Thailand. Like in some ways, Thailand was like the last place on the list. But then when you really thought it through and did all the planning, it was like, you know what? Actually, the best place to hold this event would be Thailand. Even though, yeah.
It's quite friendly, eh?
Well, I mean, if you ask people to spend a ton of money coming to New York City for an event like that, like everything in New York is expensive, including the hotel. Do you really feel that their holiday or their budget is justified? I mean, with Thailand, there's a certain level of just the quality of their vacation, quality of life that they're going to have, where you don't feel you have to apologize if you're inviting people to go to an event in Thailand. Yeah.
À-bas-le-ciel.